Russia is being routinely rocked by Ukrainian attacks. The industrial heartland of Russia is open season. Ukraine is hitting the fuel that moves Russia's war. The targets are not just the refineries, however. They're also the dispatch hubs, the depots, the radars, as well as the factories within Russia. Ukraine's objective, as we've discussed, is not about just making things difficult for the Russians. And it's not about creating human suffering. It's about making sure that the Putin regime cannot survive. And today, with some of the recent developments, that looks like it could be much more of a reality than we might have believed. My name is Jason Smart. I'm a special correspondent for the Kyiv Post and a national security advisor. Russia today is facing a lot of problems, and one of those is the lack of mobility on the front. But another one is the panic at home. The fact that today Russians see that there's no part of European Russia that is safe from the sustained Ukrainian deep strikes. Russian energy infrastructure is burning across the interior of the country. We saw the recent attacks at the Koropovsky gas processing plant, the one that was located down in Volgograd. That one was processing about 450 million cubic meters per year. That is a ton of processing. But today, it's not doing that anymore. Today, it is sitting there smoldering. We saw something very similar in Yefimovka. That's the linear dispatch station also in Volgograd. That is a major Transneft node that moves tens of millions of tons every single year. Damage to these sorts of nodes creates choke points. That means that the southern crude cannot flow as it had before. And that is why these attacks today are the ones that are changing the war. We see that within Russia, there is another problem they're facing. And that is not because the people complain. Obviously, nobody cares about the people of Russia. It's something different. It's that even the oligarchical class within Russia is realizing there's some serious problems. Things are not going the way that they should. And that is a very good thing. Now remember, Vladimir Putin, as we've discussed before, doesn't have to fear his people. He knows they're under control. It took the past 2.5 decades of routinely cracking down on them, taking away their rights and prosecuting them, that now there is very few people left with teeth in the society. Most people fear the power. However, those who have less fear of the power are those that have their own power. Those who, for instance, are colluding with people in the FSB, or colluding with people in the military. And we know that the Russian government thinks this is happening. And the reason we know we think this is happening is because we could see what they've done. Look, after Prigozhin took his ride towards Moscow. On his way up there, he stopped in Rostov, where there's the Southern Military Command. That is the headquarters for where they make all the decisions for the war in Ukraine. When he was there, what do we see? We saw the senior leaders of the Russian military come out and chat with him. They were scared. They were clearly nervous. There's videotapes of it, so it's not a question how they felt. You can see their hands trembling. That's probably a very good sign that they wonder about the stability of their own country. They wonder what will come next. It's not surprising that Vladimir Putin himself had the same question. Because when the Prigozhin revolt began, what did he do? Did he stand his ground? Did he threaten Prigozhin to a duel? No, he fled. Because Vladimir Putin is a coward, and he always flees. And he has very good reason to flee. Because these other things that we're seeing, they're not very good signs for Russia. Which leads us to something else. Is it amazing or not that the Western press acts like Putin is a tough guy? All the evidence that we have is that he is not. He is obviously not a master strategist. He's well enough proven that. At this point, we see that his military is not the world's second greatest. It's the second greatest only in Ukraine. But going ahead, what else we can say about Russia is that economically it cannot survive this war. We look at what's happening in society, and we see that the tension is rising. Within the Kremlin, we see all the indications that things are getting worse. However, the press reports as if Russia is destined to win, or that somehow Russia should be treated differently, that it's a special country, which it is not. Russia, like any other country, can be defeated in war. It depends on how prepared they are and how they execute this war. But judging from how things are going, it doesn't appear that they're waging this war very well. It appears that they're taking a clobbering. So help me bring this truth to more people. It's very important that people, especially in the West, understand that Ukraine can win. We've seen the recent statements from the White House, where the president now, who was a skeptic about Ukraine, has said something different. He thinks that Ukraine can win. That is a narrative that is very useful to the Ukrainian cause. So help me get it to more people. Help me let other people know the truth of what's happening where I live, in Ukraine, and what's really happening in Russia. A basket case of a country that is falling apart, despite what the press says. The way you can help me? Please like this video, subscribe to this channel, consider becoming a channel member today, and share this video with others, as well as leave your comments below. But there's one other quick thing I wish to mention, and it's very good news. We have been fundraising for drones. As you know, this has been an ongoing effort. But something came up, and it is great. Somebody has agreed to match up to 50,000 euros for every donation we make. 50,000 euros. So if you donate 10 euros, that means that 20 euros is going to Ukraine, getting life-saving drones. So I will pin in the first comment below how you can make a donation, be it by PayPal or bank transfer. In all cases, this is how we can help Ukrainian soldiers come home from this war. We can help make sure that somebody's son, somebody's father, somebody's husband comes home. So let's look at what Ukraine is doing. Ukraine is fighting a war on a level that we've never seen before. There's never been a war like this. Drone warfare is actually incredible. And day-to-day life in Kyiv, I can assure you, there is not less than 3, 4, 5 conversations a day about drones. It is a perennial topic. And it is fascinating. And myself, a non-technical sort of person, I'm a political scientist. But even I find it to be fascinating because it's changing so fast. There are so many revolutions in how drones function. Look at what we've seen with the Luti-class drones that are being used right now, going over 1,000 kilometers to strike deep inside of Russia. It's pretty amazing when you consider the fact that they can carry 50 to 75 kilograms. That's a lot of weight. That's about 40 pounds. Now, if they can carry all of this deep inside of Russia and they attack things such as Orsk, Orsk is about 1,400 kilometers, so it's about, let's say, 900 miles from Ukraine. Going so deep inside the country, being able to attack targets there is not just a problem for Russia's economy. It's just not a problem for Russia's ability to produce fuel. We talk a lot about that because it is something that is choking the entire economy of Russia. It is putting more strain and pressure on Russia than what it's faced in decades. But it's not just that. It's created something else, a psychological effect. People, common citizens, of course, fear this. How would you feel if you looked out the window tomorrow and saw drones flying by? And the next thing you know, you saw the local oil refinery in flames, or you saw the local factory burning. That probably wouldn't make you feel very secure. Imagine hearing air raid sirens regularly. Imagine all of a sudden turning on the TV to see the government saying that nothing has happened. Those are all false reports. Now, that doesn't engender a great deal of trust from the population. The population is largely brainwashed. That is true. But when your eyes tell you something, it's very hard to believe your ears. And so today, the Russian people are seeing that their government is lying to them. They see that there is scarcity across the country. The Russian government even admits it. And it's not just in Crimea, it's not just in the south. It is across the whole country. We see today that the imports are plugging the gaps that the domestic runs are struggling with. For instance, we see that Belarus is shipping more and more fuel to Russia. It's amazing to imagine that Russia now is dependent on little Belarus. How bad things have become. But today there's something else going on. We see that the Russians are forced to expend more money than they have ever to use their trade routes. Today, Russia's worried about Ukraine striking things such as their ports, striking things such as their aircraft. And that means they have to keep them out of reach. But keeping them out of reach, that's nothing small. That's a big deal. Just consider when you're loading across thousands of kilometers, how more barrels of fuel that is going to burn. How much more expensive all of those goods become for the average citizen. All of these things show that there are problems. Let's consider something else that's going on as well. Ukraine is degrading Russia's ability to surveil, to watch what is happening in its energy corridors. Look at the drones that destroyed a Neva radar in occupied Boyka offshore platforms. The hit degraded Russia's awareness in the northwest Black Sea. That's a big deal. Less warning time opens windows for follow-on energy strikes. So is Ukraine going that direction? Well, it seems very likely. There's also reports now that Ukraine is starting to scope out the targets in Belgorod, Russia. Now, we don't know what Ukraine's going to do, and it's good that it's not clear what Ukraine is going to do. However, we can think about this rationally. If Ukraine is striking things in the Black Sea, striking things in the north in Belgorod, and routinely striking Crimea as well as the Donbass, what does this mean? Well, it means Russia is being hit at many places at the same time. And that is putting more stress on the Russian military. That is putting more stress on Russia's ability to wage war. If their military is stretched out across thousands of kilometers, how well can they really defend those points? Consider this. The Russian military is currently understaffed. Despite having a massive country, despite having money, they cannot afford to continue waging this war, and they don't have enough money to offer people enough to be willing to fight. So Russia today is not looking like it's having a good day. It looks like it's having a very bad day. Today, every refinery outage is a brigade waiting for fuel. It's not just maneuvering that matters, it's every ration cap. It just means that there's going to be domestic vulnerability. Every time that we see these export bans, this means that the Putin regime is unable to cope. These signs of not being able to cope mean something else as well. If you're in the elites and you realize that the regime is so weak, and you also realize that the regime could at this point be destabilized, why would you wait for it to eventually fall? If you realize all the signs are pointing in the right direction, wouldn't the smartest thing be to be the guy who takes the power, to be the one who seizes the Kremlin? And it wouldn't be that hard. There's only a few people you have to get rid of, and you quite literally could lead Russia. Now, if you consider that, and you consider the opposite effect, how about if Putin chooses to stay in power? How about if the country eventually collapses? How about if our entire economy goes into hyperinflation? And you look at those options and you say, that's very bad. Ending the war now could save me a lot of headache in the long run, especially now that we see that the FSB has free reign to go out and arrest people, to lock them away without trials. If you're one of the elites and you realize that the country is going into the abyss, probably one of the wisest things you could do would be to take it out of the abyss, to drive it a different direction. But the only way you can do that is by making sure there's no more Putin to be running the country. So we cannot exactly know what people in the elites are saying, how they're feeling about this. Of course, there's a lot of people within Russia who are totally allegiant to the regime. Even among the elites, of course, they're scared to move against Putin. That's quite natural. But let's not forget, even against Hitler, there were attempts to get rid of him. So if that's the case, and history shows that even in a regime such as Hitler's, people were willing to take the risk. Is it not possible that people within Russia, people within the elites who Putin meets with, would realize that perhaps by creating a Putin-free world, they will live better lives? And at the end, what do they care more about? What Putin wants? Or about their own security and their own family's safety? For Vladimir Putin, there doesn't seem to be a lot to look forward to. Thank you for watching. Please like this video, subscribe to this channel, and consider becoming a channel member today. As always, thank you for supporting Ukraine.
What would you do for love? Stay when the world screams leave. Come back even when the locks are sealed by war. Step between the storm and what you hold dear. Between the fire and what must be saved. What would you do for love? Forgive the wounds carved deep. Carry the scars that never fade. Love raw with streets in ruins. A heart split open. Eyes that have seen too much. You can't fight love, but you can fight for love. What would you do for love? Love when it's terrifying. Love like it's the last day. Love because it's all that's left. Stay, protect, keep fighting, keep loving.